Hi, good morning, everybody. I am joined today with Jonathan Finkelstein, CEO of Credly. And I called up Jonathan and I said, I'd really like to dive in and discuss digital credentialing and the trends that we're seeing out in the world. I certainly have noticed that there is a lot more activity around this topic. I'm seeing colleagues and peers posting more information about credentials that they have earned. And I think there are a lot of great questions that people might have about what's this new technology and how is it going to change our futures. And for those of you who don't know, Credly is a really fantastic organization. And over the past year, I've gotten to know Jonathan and many of the really great people that work with. And I can't say enough about the people that you've got at your organization. They are all extraordinarily knowledgeable about these topics. They are really professional and just a true delight to work with. And so we've partnered up together on some activities that we might talk about a little bit today. But kind of with that, Jonathan, can you talk a little bit about what is a digital credential? And why would an individual be interested in one? And to that extent, why would an organization invest in having a digital credentialing strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I get into that, thanks for having me on your live feed, and it's and for the very nice words you said about our team. We certainly have a really passionate, dedicated, mission-driven group of people who are indeed trying to help. At the end of the day, what digital credentials are all about, they're about helping people realize their full potential on the basis of their actual skills and knowledge and abilities. Credly's approach to this is ultimately through the lens of how do you help organizations make better human capital management decisions on the basis of verified information of skills and abilities. And I think that helps us focus in on what is a digital credential. It's a way of representing in a verified, in other words, a trusted way, what it is that somebody knows and can do. And what's really, I think, important about it is that it allows any type of organization that sees you performing your skills or sees your capabilities in action to provide you with that portable, verified proof that you can take with you. And somebody might say, well, doesn't a paper certificate do that? Well, yes, a paper certificate is portable, but you tend to have to mail it around or carry it or hang it on the wall behind your desk. And it tends to only support really one line of information. And so while they are valuable and while they help people feel good about their skills, they don't really take advantage of this connected and digital world that we all live in.
Yeah, I think that's interesting about the paper certificate and just kind of the line of information. What I have found so compelling about your service and digital credentialing in general is the ability to point back to how the earner achieved or acquired that particular credential, and it's tied to real evidence. So instead of just taking a look at, here's the organization that gave me the credential, believe me, it's on this topic. You really can do very specific information of either the type of learning experience that someone went through to earn it, and or how they have demonstrated it on the job.
Absolutely. A credential, once it's in digital form instead of on a piece of paper, or as is the case in many places, not existing anywhere, a lot of the achievements and skills that deserve to be recognized are relegated to self-reporting on a resume or on an online profile. But a digital credential can have a whole array of structured, rich data, which not only helps the person communicate to someone they might encounter in a professional setting what they can do, but it also increases their discoverability within an organization, because you can rely on the fact that 2 people or 10,000 people or 1 million people with the same achievement can represent it in the same way. And that takes some of the guesswork out, but it also allows you to hook up that talent to pipelines of organizations and departments that are looking for people with those skills, in a way where if you were relying on self-reported or inconsistent input of each person trying to tell their story about that achievement in their own way, you would wind up with the world we have today, which is where it's like a needle in a haystack trying to find qualified people. It's also a world that actually perpetuates not only inefficiencies but bias and reliance on old standbys, like, your pedigree, or whether you have a degree, or whether the person went to a school whose name you recognize, or whether you can pronounce the last name of the person. We have all sorts of biases we bring to making decisions that are meant to make it easier for us to make decisions. Our brain tries to sort through so much information. Digital credentials organize people's skills, and they do it at scale. And I think that's a big part of what makes this so interesting. Christopher, you mentioned that you were seeing people's credentials appearing on LinkedIn, and it seemed like it was happening at greater velocity. I'm curious what are some of the things that you might recall, or the kinds of skills you've been seeing appearing lately?
Yeah, well, a good friend of mine, Heidi Scott, posted just the other day that she had earned a credential in, and it wasn't just kind of like, hey, I went to, a weekend workshop. I mean, this was kind of real interesting and a long-term investment on her part. And it was pretty cool to kind of drill down deep into the badge and see what sort of experiences and skills she was practicing before he had an opportunity to earn that credential. And seeing lots of different I'm attuned to the fact that they're coming from the Acclaim platform, but I would say the number of badges that have been shared over the last week kind of represent, to me, in my mind, that people have taken this extra time to search for skills that they might want to do practice on their own for self-improvement, and that's starting to come to fruition for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Can you show us what one might look like?
I'd be happy to. In fact, I've got my screen here. Let's bring that up. Well, I'm just starting right here on LinkedIn, one of the places where we are live right now. And I just did a quick search just to see what's live in my feed. So these are just as of just a couple of moments ago. Here are some people who are completing Coursera courses. Coursera is a partner with Credly for many of their professional certifications. We'll jump into one of these, but let's just get a feel for some of the things that are live right now. Here's somebody who earned their AWS SysOps Administrator Associate credential. When you see these, what you're seeing is these verified achievements are coming directly from these organizations. So directly from IBM or AWS, or here's a credential somebody earned from EY. Unlike most things that appear on someone's LinkedIn page, which are self-reported, these are verified, data-rich representations that are coming directly from the organizations that issue them. Here's one from World Education Services, which has validated this person's international academic qualifications, essentially a Rosetta Stone for people who are employed by North American companies who might be unfamiliar with what credentials outside of North America actually mean. This might be similar to the one that you were describing earlier. Here's a coaching program from the International Coaching Federation. So the depth and breadth of these credentials is pretty remarkable. But one thing they all have in common is the data we were talking about earlier. So here we can see this person's DevOps, SysOps administrator credential includes a range of skills and criteria, details about what the context for this credential was. It also includes job postings that are actually hiring against these particular skills or certifications that are based in a particular person's geography, which obviously is an important element today. People really, if ever there was a time to be thinking about what's the ROI of my certification and having earned a credential, it certainly is now. You mentioned, Christopher, that seeing what feels like a surge or an acceleration of the growth of these credentials. We certainly are seeing that too. I think it's a combination of people perhaps not having the commutes that they used to have during this time of social distancing. For some people, it's about thinking about how can they ensure that they're going to be a marketable member of their current team, and that if they feel like the writing's on the wall, that their nature of their job may be changing, how do they prove that they've got new skills, or how do they in fact earn new skills? And from the organization's perspective, there's certainly how do we do more with the talent we have at a time when we may not be hiring as much from the outside? How do we see more about the skills that people at our organization, a greater transparency into their skills, better communication of the pathways that people can take within a company. One of our partners, IBM, published a post on our blog just in the last week that they've seen 120% year-over-year increase just in the last couple of weeks in those earning credentials from IBM. And that includes not only IBM employees, but also people who rely on IBM's free and open content on things like blockchain, AI, Python, data science, people who are really trying to polish not only their skills, but to improve their credentials and how discoverable they are at a time when people are really going to be looking to get it right when it comes to hiring, when the cost of getting it wrong has never been higher with the labor market the way it is right now.
Yeah, and IBM's a interesting case study. I think, don't they have something like over 800 different credentials that they provide?
At least, yeah. I think it may even be more than twice that. What's fascinating about IBM's approach is they've said our people learn in lots of different channels. They learn on LinkedIn, they learn on Coursera, they learn through our training programs, they learn through our product certifications, they learn from academic institutions. Some people will learn before they join IBM, others will learn after they leave IBM. We want to make sure we have a consistent source of truth and have a common language for understanding those skills. And so IBM has, like as we're seeing with many companies who think like they do, are applying a credential to every learning outcome, whether it be a training course, internal, external, even role-based achievements. What does it mean to be a project manager at IBM? There's a set of skills and competencies that your demonstration, your application of those skills actually mean. How do you put all of those credentials into the same kind of a structure that we were just looking at with some of these other certifications? And so if you're a training partner of IBM, odds are you've been asked by them to issue to recognize the outcomes of the training you do in this open standards format, so that IBM can really have a very clear and consistent window into its talent at any given moment.
I think that part of digital credentialing is really interesting, because we've certainly seen how hard it is to integrate data from learning management systems and HR talent systems, and getting all of that data kind of well connected so that you can have a good picture of what are the current capabilities that your organization might have, or what are the capabilities that your organization is on the cusp of having, right? That you might have discovered that. I guess what I'm saying is it has been hard to know whether or not that you have people with skills kind of at the ready if you want to take advantage of a new market opportunity.
Absolutely.
But I think one of the big powers of your platform is when you've got a good integrated strategy using this type of a system with verification, that you empower some interesting decision-making opportunities where you could say, with just a tiny bit more of investment on our curriculum in this particular area, we could quickly pivot and have 1,000 or 2,000 people be expert at a new business opportunity. And without it, and I think in the past it was hard for those systems to really well communicate anything other than we sent people to training and they completed it at some overall percentage. But what that really means for our organization as far as capabilities was kind of hidden, and I think hard to communicate, so that people who might make a pivot like decision would really know whether or not that's risky or not.
That's right. That's right. And there, I think traditionally, if the outcomes of these investments in training have been recorded at all, they've tended to be recorded in a binary format. Someone took a training or they didn't. Whether the curriculum or the skills that were part of that are the same today as they were 12 months ago, the system where it's recorded rarely knows. At large organizations, there may be multiple learning management systems being used, and sometimes the outcomes are stored in one versus the other. Sometimes they appear as a completion check mark, other times as a score, but rarely in a consistent skill or competency focused and structured approach. Sometimes they wind up in an HRIS or an HCM system, other times they don't. And you can pretty much bet that most organizations have no idea about the training and skills that were learned outside of their own training programs, except for maybe that like once or twice a year when they say, hey, don't forget to log in and update your HRIS profile with like the new stuff you earned, in which case most people are listing it in their own way. And usually through, the not in any, with any intent to deceive, but they may be describing it in a very different way than the actual skills were meant to be described, or that the credentials are being described by somebody else who completed it somewhere else. So, yes, and to your point, what emerges once you do start to capture data in this way is you wind up with better decision making, as you mentioned, Christopher. You also wind up with surfacing people who have skills from areas of the company or organization you might not have thought to look at before. There are people in your IT department who know about marketing, and there are people in your marketing department who actually know about HTML or good user interface design. And it may just be, as you said, just the delta might be one or two skills, or might just be not having had a chance to try a project at a different scale. And this is a terrific time to be at really better understanding the talent that you have at your fingertips, and people are eager to demonstrate their ability to deliver.
Mm. Can you talk? This sounds probably a lot of people are saying, "Boy, this sounds really good," and it's going to be kind of a hard investment for my organization, especially now. I mean, we're certainly seeing an uptick in demand in asynchronous learning, convert materials that were instructor-led to some other forms that they can be delivered. What I think it's important to invest in this now and in the future because of many of the things that we brought up here this morning. But do you think that there is a lot of competition here for thought? Is the investment somewhat low to start experimenting and putting together a plan? And what would an organization expect if they said, we need to get in front of some of these opportunities and really dig in?
Yeah. Well, I think, my own thinking on this has evolved over the years. The more we've worked with organizations in different industry sectors, different organizational types, from nonprofits to for-profit organizations, and from academia to credentialing bodies. The one thing that I think is a really useful starting point for everybody is to say, okay, well, what's the strategic purpose of the training program I'm doing to begin with? What's the strategic reason that I'm investing in the actual content development, or what are the outcomes I'm looking for? The credentials are actually another way of just talking about outcomes. Call it backwards design, call it what you will, but it is essentially saying, let me define what the human capital change will be to somebody or to my organization when this learning event has been completed. So a credential is almost like setting the price. It's the currency. It is the ability to transact with whatever has happened that led up to it. It's an indicator for, is this person going to be able to deliver on the performance I expect? Will I be able to take on those 10 or 50 more projects that my company is being asked to do if this person has this or these credentials? So one can easily argue, and many of the folks that I've been close to over the years have actually found this to be true, that if you start by designing the credentials, you will understand how they can be spent, how that currency can be spent. Will it actually be regarded as something that's worthy of a promotion? Will it give someone a raise? Will it actually help you fill the gap in the projects the company's being asked to do? Will it help you pivot into an area that your competitors are pushing you towards, your customers are wanting you to pursue? So in terms of getting started, credentials are a good starting point. In terms of the investment involved, often people already have a description of what they expect someone who's completed a course to be able to do. It's called the learning objective sometimes. Sometimes it's a list of other stakeholders at the company or the organization that have said, if you could just train 2,000 more people in this area, we would put them to work. Or and so most groups already have some sense as to what those outcomes should look like. And it's a great place to start. At Credly, we have some organizations that are ready to begin doing that on their own, and others who rely on either our assistance or the assistance of partners like you, Christopher, and your team, to help put together a currency that's going to be valued. I want to make sure I'm answering your question, though. Were you looking? Did I get to the right level of specificity?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one of the things that I think I've uncovered, certainly digging into the Acclaim platform, and we've been using it and talking to it about it with our clients, and I believe in it so much we're using it at the Allen Academy to demonstrate what sort of skills and experiences people have gone through. And so we've got longer programs. Some of them, are made up of 3 or 4 courses where you're actually working on real work while you're becoming exposed and practicing skills inside the curriculum. One of the things that I think this really empowers us and the individuals who are good is that they can demonstrate that not only did they spend time in this course, but that they then used it on the job, and were able to record and help people share that their skills have indeed changed. And one of the things that I think is interesting and hard about training is often organizations think about it as their secret sauce. So for an instructional designer, oftentimes, they aren't able to show their best work, especially if they did it, kind of work for hire, they were collaborating with an organization. It's hard to demonstrate that their skills have changed and that they're good, because they can't take that experience or their own work and broadly share it. These are the types of things that I can do, unless they really change the content in an interesting way. But that also kind of really changes the experience. And what I think our team has discovered is we've put together credentialing strategies across a bunch of different domains, is that it isn't hard, but it straddles a couple of different functions. And for the individual and for the organization, those functions end up needing some different folks to have a voice. But what I have discovered is it's not a big investment, but you do kind of need to collaborate. And so one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is, when organizations not like us that are, have a strong internal L&D team, start going down the path of putting together a digital credentialing strategy, who's brought to the table and who kind of really leads that particular charge?
Yeah. It's interesting. Sometimes who leads the charge or who's brought to the table can unfold in different ways in different organizations. It really depends on where the initial impetus for this kind of recognition is coming from. But we found is often whoever starts at the table, it usually winds up filling out that table with a range of other stakeholders by the time the program's ready to launch. So for example, a program could start from an L&D department, a group charged with creating the content and doing the upskilling. A very natural place for it to go, especially when L&D stakeholders are saying, how will I know when these people are ready? And having the delivery of that person from their upskilling to being back into practice performing is signaled really nicely by a credential. But often you also then wind up with your chief people officer at the table. This is somebody who says, you know, our competitive advantage in this world is our people. We want to promote the value of our people, not only to the talent pipeline of potential new employees in the future, but also to our customers, and say, we invest in upskilling. These are the people who are going to work on your products, your programs. These are our experts. And so there's a retention and engagement strategy, as well as a talent pipeline strategy that chief people officers and their teams care a lot about. Most people today, even especially, I don't think this, I think this will be truer than ever once we emerge from the current labor market crisis, but people are going to care about who are the companies that invested in their growth, who are the people who treated them well on their way out the door, even if they had to make reductions in their staff. Credentials being portable are a great way of signaling to that person that you have invested in their learning and in their job prospects. Whether you stay with the company or whether you leave, it is a great way of branding that organization as a great place, not only to work, but a great place to learn. And then you'll also wind up with your marketing team for similar reasons, because issuing credentials either to your employees or to your customers or to the people who complete your learning and training programs, if you're an association or a college or university, organizations find that they can generate tens of thousands of dollars a month in free social media promotion, because individuals who completed those programs are out telling the world about their new skills. That's unpaid advertising, and your best stakeholders, the people who are benefiting from those, are telling their networks about their new skills. So those are just a few of the groups that come to the table, but not the exclusive set. The table does round itself out pretty quickly. There's something in it for everybody.
You hit on something that's important to me, and certainly something probably if you've watched a live stream that we've had recently, I've probably talked about it ad nauseum, which is the concept that the people that you serve with great learning content need to believe that the next event that they're going to get from you is one that's going to impact them personally. And having that kind of cultural baseline of, I believe this is something that's going to be healthy for me, beneficial to me, means as a student, I'm more apt to lean in and put real effort towards this particular learning experience. And some of the things that you just described about, people sharing that content and showing that they have earned these badges really kind of attest to, well, I'm not going to share that badge if it wasn't a good experience. And on the other side, other colleagues inside the organization see that somebody that went through a particular training event and they're kind of broadcasting that it was pretty good, helps lift up or create enough of a baseline of those experiences to say that the learning opportunities here are pretty good. And that makes the role of an instructional designer a lot easier. If we have to do a lot to really convince you that this is going to be healthy and beneficial to you. That's some of those things are expensive. I mean, getting a good motivated audience that really wants to dig in isn't an easy task. And
That's
so
right.
all the things that we can do to set that baseline and get people excited about it, I think is really healthy. And then, as you're saying, from the outside looking in, it makes a real, I think, personal impact to say that this organization believes in me, or this organization believes in the people that are there, and so much so that they're willing to share that the person has changed in some way, that they've gained new skills while they were here, and if they go off on their own or on to the next new experience, that being able to take a little bit of what they've learned with them and share it, I think is kind of a gracious experience, or a gracious effort by the organization, and certainly puts everyone who's working there in particular good light.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Go ahead.
Just to put a capstone on that, I think that a credential says as much about the person who earned it as it does about the organization that gave it. You are right. It's an expression of values. It's a dignified way of interacting with either your employees or your customers or the people you serve. Giving credit where it's due, and having the confidence in your organization's relationship with those stakeholders to know that that setting it free with that person adds value not only to them, but it does return to those organizations in many quantifiable ways.
I've got one last topic that I wanted to pick your brain on a little bit, and we've touched on it already, so we might not need to go too deep, but a lot of organizations think of their training truly as their secret sauce, and it's not something that they want to share. How are you helping organizations, either with the technology and platform, overcome kind of that fear that might be a perceived barrier that I don't think either of us believe really needs to be there for digital credentialing and having that sort of strategy put in place?
So it's a natural question for organizations to ask. If I'm giving somebody a portable, meaning a credential they can go share and post and use in other places, am I somehow, as you said, giving away the secret sauce? The fact of the matter is, people will self-report what they know and can do anyway, and people will respect NDAs and confidentiality agreements. They're not going to publicly share what they are not legally allowed to share. So if people are going to do it anyway, and we know there are already mechanisms to make sure people don't share what they're not allowed to, what you wind up doing by issuing credentials for skills is a range of things. But one, you have a sanctioned or approved way of doing it that's consistent for everybody. You get to see how and where those credentials are being used because they're digital. So there's some terrific analytics that return to the organization about the visibility, the use, the utility. You are signaling, if this stuff is so great and so proprietary and so awesome, you're letting the world know about the amazing things you do. You also don't, you can talk about skills and competencies without giving away secret sauce or information. You can let people know what kinds of jobs people are able to do, what kinds of knowledge they have, without signaling the actual projects they worked on or what would be confidential. And the notion about as you might sometimes have heard, and we heard this more, I think, a few years ago than we would hear it today, that if somebody, will somebody get poached because they have this portable credential? And I think that has not proven to be the case. In fact, we've seen more examples of people having higher retention and engagement with their employees by arming them with this visible, verified recognition of their skills than people off going to look for and take other jobs. And so that has been unfounded. And by the way, if all of this isn't convincing enough, there is the ability to restrict a credential and say, this can only be seen by our organization. But that is a last resort for most groups. And we're finding, although it's nice to have it available and it gives people peace of mind, most organizations arrive at that notion that having this credential seen is going to accrue value to us as an organization, not detract from it.
I have posted, thank you very much for that. I have posted in the chat some resources that folks take a look on the resources page for what would someone need?
Yeah, so on our resources page, we have an amazing marketing and content development and thought leadership team that is constantly talking to partners and customers and users of credentials and generating case studies, generating data and thought leadership, looking at what's going on in the world of credentials. You'll find podcasts where we interview both earners of credentials and folks who are developing credential systems and those who live in the ecosystem but might not yet be issuing credentials but have something important to add. So a lot of data, a lot of new and original thought leadership and kind of context for the world of credentialing and badges. So I recommend checking out the resources part of the Credly.com site. And then
I'm certainly seeing, as we said at the outset, I'm certainly seeing more credentials being shared from the Acclaim platform. If someone wanted to go out and search and see what more of these things would look like, they would go to, I believe it's youracclaim.com.
Yeah, if you bring up Yeah, Euroclaim.com, and you can see just a quick example. If you create a free account, you're logged in, you've got a search area on the site, and if you're curious about the kinds of things that people might be certifying from both companies, credentialing associations, you can go ahead and search by skill, by issuer, by actual badge or certification. So here, for example, are all the project management certifications. So it's a great way to get some inspiration about how people are acknowledging achievements and all the different kinds of contexts.
Cool. I find this stuff really, really exciting, and I can't say enough nice things about your platform. It's really, I think, from a issuer side, very intuitive to create badges. And to set up a plan so that you can deliver it. And I think as an earner, I've had an opportunity to get my own PMI credential as an Agile certified practitioner, and that experience went really well. And working together, I've just been really impressed with how thoughtful the design is and how seamless it does feel. I mean, there's not a lot of cognitive load in using your platform on some topics that I think are heady. I mean, there's the whole idea of setting up this sort of strategy to illuminate what's happening requires thought and detail and deep conversations. And the platform that you guys have is really well done and makes that part not hard, so that you can really dig into the important parts, which is, what skills do we want to amplify? Do we want to talk about? How do they fit in with other things that are happening inside our organization? And how do we communicate that well so that the learner isn't confused about what is this journey going to be like for me, and where do I want to go next to improve my own abilities, both and as you said, both inside an organization and outside.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. There is something very elegant about finding a way for the world to speak a common language. There's a lot of complex things that go on at organizations. Everyone's story is unique. Mm-hmm. But often the things that make up your story, you've had a common experience with other people, and to be able to improve the way people talk about their abilities and the way organizations make decisions based on people's abilities. There's a lot of complexity to it, but at the end of the day, it should feel simple, and it should be fairly elegant. And I appreciate you noticing that, and that it's a useful framework for making sense out of what can be complicated stories.
I imagine that was a really, really fun journey for you guys, and it certainly shows in your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. I really thank you for joining me this morning. I think a good conversation. I am inspired by your work and your words and thoughts, and I hope others will kind of take a look, and we can kind of continue this conversation here as the summer rolls on. And I'd love to have you back to talk about new and innovating things that you're seeing as we're seeing, again, what I believe is a bigger investment in good training opportunities for folks, and digging into helping folks find meaning in their career.
Count me in. Happy to rejoin you anytime. Love working with your team as well. And I think our first conversation was over omelets and pastrami omelets at a Las Vegas restaurant at one of the big instructional design and L&D conferences. This is just as nice, just as intimate. So happy to have these conversations anytime.
Thanks so
much.
much.
I'll make my own omelet.
Yeah. All right. Sounds great. Thanks so much. I'll talk